Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I see we have a few folks already here. We'll give a sec to get started, but I'll go ahead and kind of walk through some of our housekeeping. Welcome to our live session. My name is Christy. I'm the marketing manager here for our Master of Science in Learning Design and Technology. I'm going to be introducing our wonderful panel guests that you see on the screen in just a few moments here, but first, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. We'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Please go ahead and find that chat feature on the side of your screen. We would love to have you say hello. Let us know where you're joining in from, where you're logging in from today. We'd also love to get a sense at where you're at in your career. We know that some of you are current students of ours, and we're so happy to have you here. We know that some of you are new to our program and just starting to learn about us or just starting to learn about instructional design. So let us know where you're at, where you're coming from. Are you currently in higher education? Are you in corporate? Are you trying to move into higher education or into corporate? We'd love to get a little bit more background about you to help us answer some of your questions as we move forward. So please feel free to hop in, use that chat feature as we move throughout the session as well. Please feel free to ask questions. We'll have some Q&A at the end. Want to make a quick note that we are recording today's session, and you will receive an email with this recording. So if you are hopping in a minute or two late, or if you are needing to hop off a little bit early, or you want to revisit the conversation, you will be able to do so. Okay, great. We've got a couple people jumping in. Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We have so many great pieces of conversation today. I want to make sure we're getting right to it. So I'll look at our quick agenda. We will continue our introduction. You'll meet our speakers. We'll do a quick review of a quick overview of instructional design. Then we'll get into our panel discussion. We'll have some Q&A, and then we'll have the opportunity for those of you who are interested in learning more about LDT. We'll have some information there. Okay, so let's get into it with today's presenters. So first and foremost, we have our academic director here for the MS in Learning Design and Technology programs, Dr. Lisa Evans. So Dr. Evans has over 25 years of experience in the field in a variety of different areas. She taught her first online course 20 years ago. She received her PhD in instructional technology from the University of Virginia. Welcome, Dr. Evans. Happy to have you here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
All right, next up in our panel, we have Jody. So Jody is an instructional designer at USD Marshall School of Business. She received her Master's of Science degree in ID and Technology from CSU Fullerton. She supports USC faculty in the Hybrid MBA Professionals and Managers program. Her passions include creating meaningful, inclusive learning experiences and strengthening instructor presence in online environments. Thanks for joining us, Jody.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
All right, next up, Carol. Carol is an instructional designer paid intern with SAP Litmus. She earned her MS in Instructional Design Technology in June of 2021. She is passionate about creating learning solutions that meet learning objectives, are aesthetic, easy to use, and fun. And she started her career as a high school teacher and fell in love with developing and designing innovative lessons to reach her students. Great. Thanks for joining us, Carol.
Thank you.
All right, and our final panelist with us today is Trudy. So Trudy is here with us at USD in our Learning Design Center. So she holds an MED in Adult Education as well as an MS in Instructional Design and Technology. Let's see, her areas of interest include universal design for learning and technology tools for course development and student engagement. And her previous experience includes 20 years in student services and support in higher education. Thanks for joining us, Trudy.
Hey, everybody.
Great. Okay, so again, we know that we have a variety of people here with us today. Those of you who are joining the session, some of you are very familiar with instructional design. Some of you might be just getting started. So we like to do a really quick overview of what ID is. You may have already searched it. If not, you may have come across a number of different definitions or descriptions, but it's really about tackling problems in a systematic way and thinking about the best ways to identify gaps in performance or skills or abilities, coming up with really creative ways that are research-based and theory-based about how people best learn. So whether you're doing face-to-face or e-learning, Dr. Evans always says that, the technology may change, but good design stays the same, which we know is very key in this field. The tech may be different by the time you graduate a program like this, but it's about designing those creative solutions to problems in training and performance improvement, evaluating the outcomes of those strategies you would be implementing to make sure the learners are learning what you intended them to learn. So definitely a really growing field, gaining a lot of traction and respect in various areas. We could go on, and we definitely will in other areas, but I'd love to just get into our panel and let these wonderful speakers here with us add a little bit more to our conversation. Okay, so our first question here, Jody, I'd love for you to kick this one off for us. What was your career before pursuing instructional design?
Sure, thank you. So I would say probably 2 careers before I started in instructional design. I went to film school at USD, and I had like a 7-year career in film production. So I think I really benefited from studying screenwriting, and then in film production, just handling logistics and project management, and also film editing really helped me. So then at a certain point, I knew that I wanted to move into education, and I actually started working in career services at an art school that had a film program. So that was kind of my first step into higher education. And believe it or not, the office that I was in was right next to the instructional technology office. So I was already becoming acquainted with instructional design, but then, being situated right next to the faculty development center was really helpful as well. So that's what I did prior to becoming an instructional designer.
Great. Thank you, Jody. Carol, I'd love to hear about your experience.
Yes, so I started off as a high school science teacher, and I taught for about 5 years, and then I had an opportunity to jump into instructional design without the education in like a master's program at a big tech company. And then I was able to take some time off to raise my kids. So I took time off and felt like I needed to, restart my education to go back into the field of instructional design. And that's why I went back to school and pursued my master's. And so here I am. And it's been kind of a journey, but I'm back into it.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Trudy, love to hear from you.
So my entire career has been in higher education. I started off after college working in a continuing education unit in the College of Pharmacy, and I sort of fell in love with online learning. We did a little bit of online learning, online course development way back in like '98, before it was really a thing, and I got to help work with that. And that led me to my first master's degree in adult education, which then led me to kind of progressively more responsible levels of program management, working with students in sort of student-facing roles. And most recently, I managed quite a number of the online degree programs here at the University of San Diego. And then it was right about that point, after doing that for a few years, I decided to transition to instructional design. So.
Great. Thank you. Lisa, did you want to jump in as well?
Oh, gosh.
You don't have to.
No, it's just, I was thinking as I was listening to our panelists speak, and I was like, yeah, I'm a little bit older than that. But Yeah, I started with an interest really in technology. I mean, way back. I taught fifth grade. That was like 100 years ago, maybe about 50 years ago. I was playing around with technology in K-12 classrooms, dial-up modems, and really getting a sense of really around the research and the funding about technology and getting it into classrooms and equitable access. So that's kind of an ongoing theme for me. And then just had, a wide range of experiences, as you said in the intro, being able to do some development and research and instructional design work, but find my greatest passion for ID work in the higher ed field.
Great, thank you. Before we get on to our next question, I just want to share some of the responses that we've gotten in the chat, especially in regards to where people are coming from. So we have someone who's a retired teacher, a career counselor, instructor at a community college, special education teacher, interested in helping students, another person in higher ed, a few LDT students, yay. Let's see. College writing, have been university administrator positions, looking into options with ID, awesome. Corporate mixed, really great range here. Past experience in ed tech, product designer, instructional designer in my free time with universities in Mexico. That's really cool. And then elementary school teaching. Great. Well, thank you all for commenting. Again, as we move forward, please feel free to add questions in the Q&A for those of you who are watching. And we are recording this session as a reminder. So the recording will get sent out to you all after the session. Okay, so we'll move on to question number 2. And for this one, we'll start with Carol. What was the catalyst that got you started on your professional journey?
So I was looking for a career that provided me with more flexibility than teaching. I wanted to be able to have a schedule that allowed me to go pick up my kids when I needed to, get them from school. And also, it also gave me opportunities to either work in higher ed or in the corporate sector. So that's why I decided to leave teaching, because I wanted to have some more flexibility and more work-life balance.
Great, thank you. Okay, Trudy, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So I think for me, the catalyst was, to be truthful, probably burnout. And it was kind of a perfect storm of burnout plus an illness that pushed me into thinking that I was ready to do something different. I knew that I wanted to stay in higher education. I knew that I wanted to, at least in some capacity, influence students' lives. Interestingly enough, when I got my master's in adult education 20 years ago, I took an instructional technology class, and the instructor tried to recruit me away to the instructional technology and design program from the adult education program. And at the time I said, no. But a few years ago, when all of this sort of perfect storm happened, that was the thing that popped into my mind. And because I was working at USD with a team of instructional designers readily accessible, I started asking questions and decided it was the right way to go. So.
Great. Thank you so much. And then Jody, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have kind of similar story to my peers here. I was working in film production. It's really long hours. I didn't see myself being able to do that for the rest of my career, until I retired. So I knew that I wanted to go into education. I wanted to be in higher ed. I transitioned to higher ed, and I was working in career services. And for a while, I was considering pursuing a graduate degree in student services, but that wasn't quite right for me. To be honest with you, for a really long time, I had been interested in becoming a librarian. And so I was researching that career path, and a lot of what I was seeing on message boards and everything was that librarians were becoming instructional designers, because the librarian kind of job outlook wasn't that great. And so I had heard of instructional design. Like I said, I was next to the instructional technology office on my campus. And I just started to research it, and it looked like it really fit. And believe it or not, I actually applied to library school and to instructional design school at the same time, because I was like, I just need to give myself more time to make this decision. But as I really contemplated it, it really made sense for me, and I'm so glad that I pursued that path.
Great.
I just want to combine a little bit of question 1 and 2 in that I think our field is one that it's a big tent. So as we can see from our guests today coming from different fields, as well as our panelists, you can bring a wide range of experiences that would be transferable to the instructional design field. You don't have to come directly from a K-12 or community college or teaching background to come into the field and make meaningful contributions if you feel inspired, not just by the way that technology is used instructionally, but also just, you know, your wheels are always spinning, you have ideas, you want to tinker with some things, you feel a pull toward creative problem solving. I think those are a lot of like really broad general things that attract people from way far away from the instructional design field as they start to research it and look into it, but also those that have current careers that are kind of tangential to instructional design. So I hope that you're seeing already, our guests here today, that there is room for you under the ID tent.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Okay,
we'll
go.
One more thing.
Absolutely, please do.
So I just want to echo what Lisa said, which is that kind of this desire to creatively problem solve and come up with solutions and tinker with things and work at them until I figure it out. And those were all elements that were at least partially in every job I chose. But when I came to instructional design, what I realized is in some ways that's the whole job, right? It's all about creative problem solving and finding ways to get across to your learners what they need to know and how to make it accessible to them. And so for me, that was one of the things when I started exploring, that was part of the catalyst. Like, oh, I'm not going to have this job and be bored in a year because I've solved all the problems. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to question 3. For this one, actually, Trudy, I'm going to throw it right back to you. If you could talk a little bit about what you do in your current ID position, kind of that day to day.
Sure. So I work in the Learning Design Center here at the University of San Diego. As some of you who are students know, and some of you who are considering school may know about us, we have a portfolio of online degree programs that are managed, developed. The courses are developed by the Learning Design Center in conjunction with the subject matter expert. So I am one of the instructional designers, and on a, I don't know, sort of semesterly basis, I get assigned a series of courses, usually 4 or 5, that I work on in conjunction with a subject matter expert. And I spend my time on a daily basis meeting with subject matter experts, talking about their course, helping them develop the course, helping them solve problems that they are concerned about in the delivering of the course. I also spend my time building that course in Blackboard. I also spend some time kind of helping conceptualize media and building out storyboards for that. So one thing I might do for a subject matter expert in a particular course is say, well, what kind of media do you think? Do you want to do presentations? What do you know, what's your kind of ideas around that? And we would work together to sort out, are we going to do a storyline? Are we going to do a video presentation? Are we going to do a podcast? You know, whatever. So I do all of those things on a daily basis. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Jody, would you mind jumping in?
Sure. So similar to Trudy, I work as an instructional designer at a university. I work at University of Southern California, the Marshall School of Business. And we actually have about 4 or 5 instructional designers on our team, and we each are assigned to a different kind of specialized program. So I support the part-time MBA program, and what that means is 75% of the instruction is in class and 25% of the instruction is online. So I was actually hired when this program was transitioning from a fully in-person program to a partially hybrid program, and then, or a hybrid program. And then in another year, we're going to go up to 50% online. So it's kind of been this gradual process of working with professors to move some of their content online, flipping the classrooms, assessing whether that's working, and then assessing also how to move up to 50% online. And I think on a daily basis, I'm generally working with professors to just look at how best to flip their classroom. If that's a new professor, then I'm basically helping them with their syllabus, and then building out the design in Blackboard. This also includes developing media. So typically that would be shooting with them in our studio. So that goes all the way from scripting to shooting them, and then also choosing visuals or developing visuals to go with the video. So that's kind of a basic overview of what I do.
Great, thank you. And Carol?
Yeah, so I'm working for SAP Litmos, and SAP, some of you may know, it's a very large company. There's over 100,000 employees, and we're based in Germany. So it's a global company with offices all around the world. And so I work with a division called Litmos, which is a learning management system. And you may be familiar with learning management systems like Moodle or Canvas. Litmos is actually a learning management system for companies, for businesses. And what SAP does is they sell software as a service in the cloud. And so Litmos basically houses the courses that the businesses use for compliance training, for sales training, for HR training. So anywhere where a business needs to train their employees and get them up to speed for whatever the employee needs to do, that's what Litmos offers. So we have reporting services where the managers can track how many employees have taken their training and how well they've done, so that they would be ready to do whatever they need to do out in the field. And so I started at the company back in May, and I've had a variety of different responsibilities since I'm in an internship, which has been nice. I've worked with what's called the Litmos Dojo. It's kind of like Litmos University that trains LMS administrators how to use the tool, how to use the product. And just recently, I've been transferred to the Australia-New Zealand team, and I'm going to be working on compliance courses where I'm building storyboards. So that's where I'm at now. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move forward to our next few questions. As a reminder for those of you who are attending, please feel free to add any questions to the chat.
And I just want to add a comment, Chris, before you move on. I know all of the panelists well, so they're being a little shy about how much they really do and how hard they work in their ID positions. I want to say in regard to Trudy and Jody, working as an ID in higher ed, I think they both talent that they have or what they bring to the position is that they're thought partners. And that's a really valuable skill or attribute that if you're looking to work in higher ed that faculty are really looking for. It should feel like a collaborative relationship when you're working with a faculty member as a higher ed ID, and really letting your expertise shine as an instructional designer, offering suggestions. And it's a service related position, but it's also a collaborative partnership where you and the faculty are working together to put out the best course possible for the student learning experience. So we're both Jody and Trudy talked about, oh, and I'm helping them think about this or solve the problems. I mean, that's really what, that's the bread and butter, the meat and on the bone. I don't know the sayings, but anyway, that's like a major part of the work is being a thought partner, because instructional design is a profession with a area, you know, variety of expertise and skill sets that we bring to the profession, and it is valued. And so just a plug for Masters in ID. I mean, we do prepare our students to graduate our program with that confidence to go into those meetings with clients, whether it's the experience that Carol's having working with coworkers or new team members that she meets, or again in higher ed, working with faculty or other team members. We really develop the confidence and the skill set that you have as an ID professional to be engaged in those meaningful conversations with your work colleagues.
Yeah, I'll just add to that really quickly. So part of being a thought partner that I think is really amazing in my role, you know, I meet with global leaders and I would say statistics, communication, all, you know, strategy, business strategy, just really well-known professionals who may not have a lot of expertise in teaching per se. So my job, and you know, they actually have to meet with me. It's for them, it's not really a choice. They have to meet with me. So I think when upon first meeting, sometimes they're thinking, oh, I'm just going to show up to this, check off the box. I have to do it to launch my course, etc. But when I meet with a faculty member, I know that they know their learning outcomes. They might not call them learning outcomes, but my job is to help them articulate where they want their students to be at the end of the course. And that's the really exciting part for me, is they kind of almost think that we're speaking two different languages, but it's just that my terminology, I'm using that terminology to identify different places in the course. And they also want their students to progress along this like kind of linear path. So I'm really just there to help them do that and to gain more precision and tools to help them do that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Can I add one more thing too?
Absolutely.
Sorry. I echo what Jody said, and I also think that the being the thought partner, and what Lisa said, it's I think the most critical part of instructional design, to be able to do that and to be able to take your knowledge of learning science and apply it to the content that they want to present, so that the outcome for the student is they've actually learned what they need to learn, right? And I think that it's being able to articulate that and help the faculty person maybe move from a traditional mindset of being in the classroom to an online learning environment, and kind of helping them, you know, with those transitions as part of that process, and being a thought partner is really, like, it's my favorite part, but it's really important. So
Great. Thanks, Trudy. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to question 4. And this one, open to any of the panelists who would like to answer. How has what you learned in your ID master's program transferred to your current position? Carol, do you have any thoughts? I think you might be the most recent.
Yeah, so I would say that the nice thing about a master's program is you get to see all different aspects of ID. You know, you get to write storyboards, you learn how to write storyboards, you learn how to analyze, you learn how to design, you learn how to develop. You go through all of it, and you know, you learn the latest trends. You learn about universal design for learning, and the thing in working for a company is you don't always get a choice of what you end up doing. So you may want to be the designer, or you may want to be the developer, but sometimes you don't even get that choice and you end up doing what the company asks you to do. So for example, I really enjoy developing, but what I'm doing right now is all design work, where I'm writing storyboards. And it's nice to be able to have those skills to say, yes, I know how to do this if they ask me of it, because you just never know what you're going to be asked to do. So Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think just piggybacking on that, really learning Addie, and even Carol, when she's speaking right now, she's differentiating designing from developing. Like, you really develop a clear sense of what is the analysis phase, what is the designing phase, what is the development phase, implementation, and then evaluation. So when something is going wrong, like, you can kind of say, oh, we didn't spend enough time on analysis. Like, do we really know our users? Do we need more focus groups? And you can have a really intelligent conversation, with your supervisor or with the client, whomever it may be, or with the faculty member, about how to solve problems using the models that we currently have, either Addie or Sam.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I mean, you also get to see the big picture. There's in a lot of companies, there's a lot of what's called accidental instructional designers, people who did not really go into the field intending to do ID work, but ended up doing it because they're in like an HR training organization, or they're in learning and development, and they've been asked to and tasked to develop courses, online courses. And oftentimes they're not certain about how to do it, but they just kind of, try to figure it out. Having a master's, you really get to see the whole big picture, and you can really analyze what is truly needed, and kind of bypass a lot of the trial and errors that a lot of these accidental designers end up having to go through.
Great. Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on. We have two more questions for our panelists, and then I see we do have a few questions coming in for our attendees that we will get to after that. Okay, so what is one thing you wish you had known, or a question you wish you had asked about ID work before you started your current position? Open to anyone.
I'll jump in.
Thanks, Trudy.
So I think there are kind of two things that I think about for myself. One is I wish I had gotten, at least in my role where I am now, I wish I had had an understanding of how much project management that you really do in instructional design, particularly in a situation like mine where I'm in our unit, the LDC, the instructional designer is the project manager. There's also relationship management because you're the project manager. There's also management of, sort of products and deliverables that you delegate out to other people. And so there's a lot of, and I'm sure some instructional designer roles are not as heavily project management oriented, although I think that there's elements of it in every role. But so that for me is something that I think I wish I had known a little bit more in depth about that, because I think I would have spent some additional time learning about project management in a more formal way. So that would be kind of one of the things. The other thing is that I think the relationship management piece of being an instructional designer it's a critical piece of being an instructional designer, to know how to manage relationships well, and how to manage relationships with a variety of types of people. And so, in my program amongst the students, we would say, oh yeah, it's all about people. But until I got in the job, I didn't really know, like, it's really all about people. So, those are things that I think I probably, had I known, might have worked on honing those skills a little bit more even as I got into my new role. So, and before, as I finished up my program. So.
I would say the same type of thing for visual design. So when I was in my grad program, we had a very kind of small part on graphic design, and of course, visual design is part of, designing a learning object or a learning product. But as people who focus on the learning science, it's not really our focus per se. In my mind, I was always like, oh, I'm gonna create the design, and then there'll be a visual designer who will apply the best color palette, that type of thing. But the truth is, instructional designers are frequently tasked with all of it. And if you create something that has a 100% like solid learning design, but it doesn't look that great, we're all part of like, we live in a visual world, and people aren't going to look that much further if it doesn't look decent. So I find myself spending more time than I would like to on the visual piece because I don't have any formal training in that. So I would recommend taking some visual design courses.
I agree with that comment very much. Even though I'm at a company where we do have digital designers that's their primary role, knowing exactly how you want to communicate your course visually, whether it's layout, color, design, graphics, icons, it's really important to know how to put it on a screen, because you don't know where that course is who's going to be viewing it. And initially, if it doesn't look good, people are not going to, appreciate it, or unless they have to take the course, they may just not even go through it. So the visual design is a key part to instructional design.
I'll jump in and plug our master's program and say that we have a course dedicated to project management. And so that's something that we know is really a desired skill set that employers are seeking. So if you can speak to that experience, even from adding, any prior experience you have with project management, again, going back to your current or previous professions and how you can pull on those prior experiences and connect it to transferable skills that are applicable in ID. And on top of that, add like a current experience through your academic coursework in project management, I think would give you a leg up in job searches. So we do have a project management course in our master's program. And we also spend time in a number of our courses looking at visual design. So it touch on that in at least 3 of our courses in the program.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
I didn't know they were going to say that. I'm just following up. I'm just, speaking on the fly.
It's great. I love it. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our final question for the panelists before we jump over into our Q&A for attendees. So what advice or tips do you have for current ID master's students? And I'll extend that to our students who are just about to get started, or folks that are looking into it.
So I'll jump in again if you
like.
So I think my piece of advice would be this is going to sound crazy, soak up every ounce of what you are learning as you go through the program. And not only that, but cultivate that love of learning, because you're going to learn for your entire career. You're never going to stop learning as an instructional designer. Tools change, theories change, best practices change. All of those things change over time. And I would just encourage you to really embrace this idea of being a lifelong learner as you go through your program, as you move into your career, because it's only going to serve you well and kind of enrich your knowledge and skills and abilities. And also, if you're a nerd like me, you really like that stuff. So that would be my piece of advice.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say start building your portfolio from the get-go. Especially if you're interested in corporate instructional design, they want to see your pieces of work. They want to see something tangible, and keeping a current portfolio, constantly updating it and having it ready to go is really, really important. The other thing is LinkedIn. Network like crazy. You get to learn what other instructional designers are doing, learn about the learning and development field, join professional organizations like the Learning Guild. Just try to see what else is out there outside of the classroom, because that's really where it's happening. And things are changing so quickly in technology. what you're using today may not be used in 6 months. What I thought I was using when I was in grad school, I'm not even using at all in my current role. So it's important to just keep up to date with what's going on in instructional design, because it is a very dynamic and changing field that, you know, is moving pretty quickly right now.
Mm-hmm. I would also add to really, although it might be difficult to enjoy reading the research, I used to actually download research articles, and I had this app on my phone called Natural PDF Reader, and I would read articles while I was driving in my car. And sometimes I'd have to listen to them once or twice because they're pretty dense. But the thing is, when you move into your position, if you work in higher ed, it's a little bit easier. But there's just not a lot of time for that type of analysis. And I think if you've read a number of research studies, you come to appreciate that people have done a lot of work before you, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start from scratch. You know, you can access the work that's been done before you, and really use that knowledge to in your work with your clients.
I agree with what everyone's saying. And Carol, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask if you'll share just a little bit more. Carol and I recently met up in person at the DevLearn conference. And that's something you can Google if you haven't heard of DevLearn, but it is sponsored by the Learning Guild, as Carol mentioned. And so we recently met up in person, and Carol was sharing how many of the experiences that she had in her master's program, she was like living it in her job. So some of your design critiques is what I'm kind of prompting you towards, Carol, if you mind sharing a little bit about that.
About DevLearn or about?
No, about just doing the critique work that you experienced with your team.
I'm trying to remember which that was. Sorry.
Oh, just you were saying that with your storyboards, you have to go through a design critique process.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm working on right now is storyboarding for this compliance course that involves multiple instructional designers. So I may be the first to have the content, and although I'm not directly working with the subject matter experts, I may have gotten the information from another instructional designer who has partially created the storyboard. And then after I go through it, it goes through a process of several reviews by other instructional designers before it goes to development. So it's quite a lengthy process. It's not a one person does it all. There's many of us on the team that I'm on. I think that's what you're referring to.
I'm just curious, are you using PowerPoint to create your decks, or what are you using to create your storyboards?
We have a template that has been created. So we have like product managers and program managers, lots of layers here. But we're actually using Word. So the template the template's built in Word because the reason why we use Word is that everyone is familiar with it and knows how to use it. And then we go through a whole review cycle. And once from Word, then it goes into a learning management program where it gets designed.
Interesting.
Jody and Trudy, do you have a similar design process? Are there fewer layers, or what does it look like?
There's definitely fewer layers for me. I think I don't do a lot of storyboarding. The thing that I do that's, I would say, similar to storyboarding is a professor will basically draft a script. I'll go through the script, make sure that it works for video, because sometimes professors will describe things in sort of a circuitous way. So you have to actually think about, okay, how would I lay this out in a video? Is there a better way to phrase this so that it's clearer when we get to the video side? And you actually need to figure that out before you shoot it. So I do a lot of that. And also I'm chunking the content. So breaking it down. Are there places where they repeat themselves? That type of thing. or are there places that just aren't clear? And then when we actually shoot the content, or even prior to shooting the content, I'm looking at different like visuals. And what we do is we have a text-based document that has sort of like the script on the left, and then I'm like referencing it in a PowerPoint deck. So the storyboard is actually kind of like two things together. It's the text plus the visuals. It's sort of like a unique thing that I feel like Marshall Online Learning has developed, and I had to learn when I came on board. It's not hard. It's just a different form of storyboarding.
Thanks, Jen.
We have a global sort of PowerPoint template that we use, and there are definitely fewer layers for us. Typically what happens is that I'll work with the SME to determine kind of what types of media they want. So maybe it'll be a PowerPoint movie, maybe it'll be a storyline, maybe it'll be a RISE presentation. But we use the PowerPoint template to storyboard those things, particularly if it's something more complex like a storyline presentation. We hand those off to an instructional technologist who produces them. And then we have some rounds of iteration to kind of fine tune it as needed. And generally speaking, if we create PowerPoint movies, those are done by the instructional designer. They're a little bit more sort of, they take less design skill than developing a storyline. So those kind of tend to remain in-house with the instructional designer. So, but it's also a little bit of a case-by-case basis too on how our process works. So,
thanks. I just wanted to reiterate the points made about kind of advice and tips. And I think that I'll start with Jody's point about staying connected to the research. Sometimes the level of writing could be a little intimidating. You have to get used to that style of writing and the way that the research is presented. But if you start, I would recommend starting with the Learning Guild, because a lot of times what they produce in their reports, it is research-based, but they'll also include a executive summary that's just maybe 1 or 2 pages to give you an overview. And you can also download the full report. And again, they're citing research. They're pretty prolific producers of staying on top of current research in the field, and it's free to join. It's just learningguild.org, something. Okay, Learning Guild, look at the Learning Guild. And so that just leads into Carol's point about like staying connected to the ID community. I find that we are a very generous community. We're really happy to share and give tips. If you post a question somewhere, you're likely to get a response from someone in the field who's grappling with a similar issue or topic. And this ranges from people who are just starting to pursue ID as a potential next career for themselves. There's a whole community of people talking about that online and LinkedIn and other online spaces. There's bloggers who post about their journey from the K-12 classroom into instructional design. There's someone named Dr. Luke Hobson. You can follow his blog. He's got a YouTube channel. He chronicles his journey from the higher ed classroom into instructional design. So there's a lot of people in the field talking about where they are at various phases in their ID journey, as students, as professionals, as career transitioners. And again, I find us to be a very generous community in terms of sharing resources, tips, advice, book recommendations, and such.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Well, speaking of more resources, tips, and advice, I'd love for us to jump over to the Q&A, if that sounds good to you all. Okay, so a couple questions, and I will say for those of you who are here, most of you are already connected to an enrollment advisor. If you are not, we will assign one to you. So if you are looking to learn a little bit more about that question that you asked or dive a little bit deeper, that will be your opportunity to continue that conversation. You can always, we'll get to some of our other contact methods later on as well. But one of the questions we have here is, let's see, I have a BA degree from Mexico in elementary school teaching, really want to pursue a career in ID. Okay, let's see, but with a foreign degree and lack of experience was looking into applying. Great, okay, so we do accept international students. So the biggest thing there is just to start early. There are just a couple of more pieces to the application if you're applying outside of the US. One is it's an English proficiency exam. There's a couple of different ones. And sometimes they can get waived based on the language that your school was taught in, those sorts of things. But that kind of exam is a big piece. And then getting your transcript evaluated. It's a course by course evaluation. So those are a couple of things that your advisor can help you process through. They also will send you different information and details on funding and financing your degree. Okay, so here's a question for you all. Do most colleges and universities have instructional designers, or do IDs tend to be at universities that offer a lot of online programs? The example, I don't think my community college has any. Lisa, what do you think?
I think that I think that colleges and universities are increasingly adding instructional designers to, as a position on campus. I think that for some schools and some divisions, there may have been people, as Carol mentioned, kind of the accidental instructional designer who fell into a role, and maybe because they a lot of times maybe that role would have been in like HR compliance training, but more and more seeing a role where, as Jody, we have here as a panelist who is an instructional designer for a specific school at USC. And so some universities are hiring IDs for specific schools and divisions. Others are have just a handful of instructional designers to meet the needs of like many faculty, many courses. If you're interested in learning more about the ID role in higher ed, I recommend taking a look at Educause. They have an ID listserv, and you can sign up for that. And they push out a lot of information, but you'll be you could receive information in real time about what IDs are grappling with in the higher ed space. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, that's a resource there. So I think it's growing. Short answer is it's growing. The presence is there and it's growing.
Absolutely.
Right. I'd also just add to that some universities actually outsource their instructional design. And so a university like USC that has multiple schools, you'll see one school has instructional designers and then another school doesn't. It doesn't mean that they don't have instructional design. They may have just hired a third party to do all of their instructional design.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point, Jody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, we've got 2 more questions left, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day and let you all get back to your afternoons. So here is a question. What is the best software or the ones that you use to create materials, video, graphic, audio?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big question.
I can jump in here. I think there's a question of what is best, and then there's a question of what your team is using, and also what should you learn to be hireable, basically. I think that the basics are Camtasia, Captivate, Storyline, Rise. Obviously, like if you know the Adobe suite, you're in good shape. I think my peers can jump in with other ones. You don't need to know, nobody expects anybody to know all these like really obscure tools. Like in my position, we use something called PlayPosit. We use something called Beyond. If you know the basics, people understand. Like, for instance, if you know Captivate is actually pretty challenging to learn. If you know that program, a potential employer is going to know that you can easily learn something like Beyond, which is very easy and user-friendly.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's sneak in one last question. How much technology is reviewed in the master's program? In other words, when we get into the field, either in higher ed or in a corporate setting, do most programs actually teach students all the software applications that we tend to see in job postings, such as Camtasia, Articulate, etc.?
So in our program, we definitely provide exposure and hands-on experience, but we don't have a specific class in e-learning, an e-learning development tool per se. We're teaching, we're preparing practitioners to go into the field as instructional designers with that science of learning skill set, but also with the hands-on experience of applying technology to that skill set. So it's this kind of hybrid approach. Definitely the exposure. Again, I'm calling back to a comment I made previously about having that confidence to go out and feel like you can apply for the positions that you see posted. So in our particular program, we support students through the use of practicing and learning e-learning development using the Articulate 360 suite. So that's exposure to be developing e-learning content in Storyline as well as Rise, and the availability of the other tools in that suite.
Can I share one thing around that? So before I made a decision about where to get my master's degree, I did mountains of research about what program to pick. I knew I needed something online because I was working full time. And what I found is that programs for the most part seem to fall into two camps. One was all theory, all conceptual knowledge, or conceptual knowledge, but let's figure out the tools. So it might be a program with some adult learning theory, but really it was about gamification. Or it was a program that was about all the different learning theories and all the different kind of concepts in instructional design, but you didn't really get much of the tools. And so I think as you guys are thinking about your decisions in terms of, am I going to go to school and where am I going to go to school? The reason I chose the program that I chose was because it offered both. And I think that's something that I would recommend. I know USD offers that, but in any program you might choose to look at, I would recommend trying to find a program that has a balance of those two things. Because what I hear a lot on the groups that are out there with new instructional designers is, when do I get to learn about the tools? I just graduated with my degree. When do I get to learn about the tools? And as you know, having some knowledge of the tools is what helps propel you into an actual being able to get a job. So my recommendation is try to find a program that has both. So.
Yeah.
And I'll just add to that in our program, and Carol's advice had been to start working on your portfolio right away once you start your ID program. And so that's an experience that we create for our students. It's an opportunity to build the portfolio that begins with our orientation course, even before you begin your foundational courses in the master's program. And you just continue to add artifacts and evidence of your ID skills, knowledge, abilities to your portfolio through completing your capstone project for graduation. So we're very much advocates of giving you the opportunity to create artifacts that demonstrate your skills and abilities. And that goes hand in hand with the response to the question about access and learning experiences with the technology. So be profiling what you know how to do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, well, we are just about at time. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for our attendees. Here's just a little bit of our information about the program. Again, you can connect with us. As a reminder of our 30-unit program, you can complete it in just under, in 20 months, just under 2 years. It's completely asynchronous, 100% online, and we offer 3 starts each year. So our next application deadline will be April 11th. So you've got plenty of time to get connected and keep learning and asking questions. For those of you who are current students or new students, you guys will be starting classes in January. So we're very excited for our next class of students. Please feel free to reach out to us at learningdesigntech.sandiego.edu. That's our website, or learningdesigntech@sandiego.edu. You can email us that way, find us on social, all sorts of things. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.